Hey, now let's try it. Hey, welcome to another episode of Dave's Imaginations. Today we're going to recap our session from Thursday. I think it was the 7th. Hey, welcome to another episode of Dave's Imaginations. Today we're going to recap our session from Thursday, June 15th. Dave's Imaginations presents Dark Queen Ascension, the Fate of Fortitude. Will the forced Fortitude be able to prevent Symmatrix's plan of bringing a purple worm into town, leveling the town so that she can find the Tome of Dragons? Will they be successful? We take a step closer, and I'll talk. We get a step closer, and I'll talk through that right after this. Stay with me. So, Symmatrix is looking for the Tome of Dragons, and she is convinced that it's in the town of Fortitude, our very own Fortitude. And she tried to bribe the townspeople into telling her where it is, but the townspeople don't even know. And so now she's frustrated that she can't find it. And so she is negotiated with General Grundlesmersh, the general of the Green Tide, general of the orc kind, and he has agreed to send a purple worm to Fortitude to help her level the town until she can find it. And word has gotten out, and Fortitude has learned of this plot. And so their initial thought was they went to the orc camp and abducted the general. And at the beginning of last week, they had brought that hastily brought that general back to their hideout, the Winterstone Temple. And they were negotiating, and they had interrogated this orc general, and had gotten all the information they want. They're a dark elf, burrow sharks, bullets, and they also asked about who the visitor was that the magic user was entertaining back at the tent at the camp, and they got a vision that it was Dag, which was very confusing, concerning, because Dag was right next to them. What is that about? And with the orc general's usefulness done, they disposed of him. Now, meanwhile, all of this was going on. They had sent Dag and Darcel out to move the horses off, to lead the orcs away from the Winterstone Temple. But when they got out of there, they stumbled upon the orcs, and they had to go into hiding. And at some point, there was a wizard with these orcs, and the wizard was doing an oogly boogly and had detected magic somewhere under the ground. And Darcel couldn't let that stand, so he went in for the attack. But this wizard turned Darcel into a chicken. And while he was being abducted, a Katota, which had made his way back from leading the orc army away from the camp as a distraction, Katota was finally making it back, and he was able to attack and lay waste to most of the orcs and the magic user. But one of the orcs got away. So as one of the orcs got away, the Katota couldn't find him, and so he went back into the Winterstone Tunnel, as did Darcel, and then eventually did Dag. And as they were going down there, they start talking about, oh no, the Winterstone Temple has been exposed. And so they had made a plan to go to the Cragmaw Castle, and they had told Dag that, and they told Dag, we need you to stay here and watch over and tell us what happens to the Winterstone Temple. And they finally, through a check, convinced him to do that. Remember, Dag's just an NPC, right? They convinced Dag to do this. And this is the Dag that they're not entirely sure is the real Dag or a fake Dag. So they tell him to do this. And meanwhile, instead of the rest of the party leaves, but instead of going to the Cragmaw Castle, they go back to the camp. They go back to the camp thinking they're going to go check out this Dag that is in the magic user's tent. And they get there, though, and then we did a sidebar to explain the story of the orc that survived the encounter. The orc who had buried himself under leaves and dirt to hide from Katota. He finally, after giving 10 minutes or so, got up and ran into the town of Fortitude and reported what he had learned about this Winterstone Temple and the resistance there. And so the magic users, the dragon cultists, Symmatrix, and the other magic users, regrouped back at the orc camp and put together some infiltration posse, if you would. But they weren't going to go right away. They were going to go in the cover of night. And so, but as they came into town, the rest of the force Fortitude was already there and watching, and they watched this force come in, and they were way out of town, but they could just barely see that activity going on. They knew something was going on, and they expected there would be a retaliation for the discovery of their fort and the missing general. And so they stayed and they watched, and it wasn't until the middle of the night that a force was sent out from this orc camp to go find the Winterstone Temple, which they did. And they marched on an hour. It takes them to get to the Winterstone Temple, and the orc force with a handful, I think I said there was 4 magic users and a whole bunch of orcs and a couple of wargs, and they go to the Winterstone Temple and they find that area. Not between magic items and then a locate object, they were able to locate where they believe this underground fortress is, and then they start using their remove earth manipulation cantrips to dig up the Winterstone Temple and use stone melding to open a hole in it, and they drop down and they ransack the temple looking for the Tome of Dragons and anything else. They do find the 2 ogres, and I'm sure there was a battle there, but ultimately the orcs and the magic users would win that battle. They do find the orc general and his equipment, and they pull him out, and we haven't explored that more, but they've already done. We'll save that. Pause. Eventually, they give up their search and find everything they're going to find, and essentially they find that it's not there. They do. I'm sure they figured out that this place was used as a hideout, but they did not find the Tome of Dragons that they were looking for. So, meanwhile that was going on, our group was trying to get a long rest out in the wilderness. And so there was this tension of, do they go and infiltrate the camp while a good portion of their forces, the orc forces, were gone, or do they wait for their long rest to be complete so they can be at full power? They opted to wait for their full rest. And we had to do a check because we did the math of when would this force be getting back to the orc camp, and it should be right around the time that the long rest would be complete. We did a fate check, and we learned that it was would they get there at dawn, and we did a fate check, and it said no, they wouldn't, and it was an exceptional no. So there should be some amount of time, we don't know how much time that is, but there should be some amount of time before the orc forces get back to the orc camp. So our party decides to go and take a peek at what's underneath the tent. Now they believe, our force Fortitude believes that in this tent is Symmatrix, and Symmatrix is a mighty wizard. They're believed to be very powerful, and so they go in and they take a peek. Katota is 300 yards back, and our forces are something around 60 yards out. And Katota uses some scrying ability to go peek into the tent. And they see a Symmatrix in her night robes, not quite put together yet for the day, making a cup of tea. But also in the tent is 2 magic users, one of which they recognize as the one they had thought they had killed back at the Winterstone Temple. And there was another one, and I don't know if I made that completely. There was actually 2 additional wizards. The one that had healed another one in addition to Symmatrix, and then Fourthly was on a cot, laying peacefully, was Dag, or seemingly Dag. Dag laying on the cot, and on his head was a red gem. And so as they discover all this with this gem and all the wizards, and the Force Fortitude in attack position, and they're about to attack, that is when we ended our evening. We said that'd be all for the evening. But before that, I'm sorry. So with the gem on the forehead and the vision, the scrying inside the tent, and just as they learned, and the Force Fortitude was all in position, ready to attack, is when I rolled another fate roll to see if Symmatrix would somehow recognize or sense the scrying, and it was a yes. And so Symmatrix sets down her cup of tea and looks off in the corner. And then with the oogly boogly wave of her hand, the scrying ends. And with the scrying end, that's when our Force Fortitude said, Katoja sends you might want to get in there. And they said, it's like, charge, let's go. And so that is when I ended the evening. Oh boy, what do you think is going to happen when we have 4 of the Force Fortitude charging the tent with Symmatrix, us, and 2 sleeping wizards, and not to mention some personification of Dag? What's going to this powerful wizards of Symmatrix? How will our Force Fortitude fare against these wizards? That is what we'll find out next week. And when it's a little bit early, we're going to start our game next Thursday a little bit earlier. I told them to come at 5 o'clock. I did promise I'd have dinner ready for them. And we're going to start as close to 5 o'clock as we can, as one of our players has to leave early. So, and then after that, we're going to have a 2-week break, as I'm going to go on vacation. So I appreciate you watching. If you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe, and we will find out what happens. What is the fate of our Force Fortitude next week as they go and try to rescue Dag. Is it Dag? Well, they'll try to rescue Dag from Symmatrix. We'll find out next week. Till then, take care.